A-1, key features of a quadratic function. From chapter 5, remember, absolute value of x. No matter what x is, y is always going to be a positive number. Now let's take a look at x squared. And notice how x squared almost looks like that absolute value graph, but it's a curve. It's more of a U-shaped type of graph, right? It makes the letter U. It has the same characteristics. Here's the reason why that no matter what x is, it's always positive, okay? Let's talk about -4 squared, okay? Well, remember that -4 squared is -4 times -4. And if we remember, two negatives make a positive. Therefore, the answer is 16. So no matter what x is, if you're squaring that number, it's always going to be positive, essentially, okay? So that's really the main focus for this lesson. And it's talking about, well, what are the characteristics? What's the important parts about the x squared function, okay? Notice the table here. No matter what x is, you're always going to get a positive answer, okay? And notice how for x squared, for example, right, if I plug in 2, I get 4. I'm basically, it looks like an exponential function, but it's just a connected u, okay? This curve is called a parabola. Okay, when you hear the word parabola, you think of u. When you see x squared, you think of also u, a U-shaped graph. Very, very important, okay? There's another thing we need to note too, right here, the axis of symmetry. And the axis of symmetry cuts the graph in half equally. So in this case, the axis of symmetry for this function will be x equals 0, because when x is 0, it cuts the graph in half, okay? One other thing to note right there, okay, that point right here, 0, 0. That point is called the vertex. And what the vertex does is at that point, that's where the graph is changing direction from down to up or from up to down, okay? So definitely think about that if you look at this triad piece, okay? When are the values of f of x positive and when are they negative, okay? They're never negative. As we just talked about up here, right? Whenever they're positive, well, keep in mind this, right? They're always positive. But whenever the x is negative, they're always going to be positive, no matter what, okay? Here we go. Well, what happens if you're multiplying a number next to x squared, like 2x squared or 0.5x squared, okay? 2x squared is actually it's more narrow. It gets closer to the center. It gets closer to the y-axis. Whereas the graph for 0.5x squared is actually further out. It actually expands, okay? So if a is bigger than 1, it gets squished or it condenses, okay? Whereas if a is between 0 and 1, okay, then it's going to stretch, okay? One more thing, if your a is negative, that means it's going to open downward. The graph is going to look essentially like this. It's going to open downward. And I think that's going to come into play for one of these, okay? So, yeah, it actually came into here, right there. Boop. Notice how for the 1.5x squared, it opened positive, but when for the down one, it actually opened negative. Whenever your a is negative, it's going to open down, okay? Does not affect domain and range. It only affects domain and range when your a is negative. That's the only thing. And it only affects the range, essentially. Because if it's negative, that means your answers are always going to be negative. Where if it's positive, it's always going to be positive. Very straightforward, okay? So here we go. Over one interval, is this graph increasing? Well, we already know what the graph's going to look like. Boop, boop. We actually don't even need to make a table because we know, first of all, for 4x squared, boop, there's your vertex, 0, 0. When is your graph going up? Well, notice how it's changing direction right here. This is where it's going in the upward direction. So we can say, as x is getting bigger than 0, that means it's when it's increasing. So it's increasing when x is greater than 0, and then decreasing, let's use purple, okay, right here. That's when x is less than 0. So decreasing when x is less than 0. Very simple, okay? Let's go to the triad part, okay? A function for the graph increases over the interval when x is less than 0 and decreases when x is greater than 0. So the graph is doing this. It's going up, then going down. When x is less than 0, it's going up. When it's greater than 0, it's going down. That means it's opening down. So that means your a is less than 0. Boop, we got it. okay? This last one is super duper simple, okay? The owner of a new dance studio is installing wooden floors in all of the dance rooms. How much should the owner expect to spend on flooring for a square room with 15-foot side lengths, okay? Well, it's $875 a square foot. That is your value of A. Here's your function. Put it next to x squared, plug in 15, boop, we got it, okay? By how much will the cost increase if the side length of the dance floor is increased by 2 feet? Basically, just change 15 to 17 because you're adding it by 2. 8.75, that's not a 5, is it? 8.75 boop, 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 times 17 squared. We can use good old decimals, and let's actually do that as a matter of fact. Let's move that over here. Let's find a decimals ordeal. Okay, decimals. 8, oh, the graphing calculator looks different actually, huh? 8.75, boop, 17 squared. There you go, 2528.75, okay? 2528.75. Okay, we are now moving towards factoring polynomials to now working with graphing polynomials, okay? So that becomes very important, okay? One more thing also, average rate of change also means slope. So remember, if we're looking for average rate of change between 2 and 4, find your answers at 2 and 4, okay? And then find the slope. That's basically it, okay? So I'm not gonna go over this per se. Remember, rate of change means slope, okay? So again, once you find your 2 points, you then find the slope. If you're not given the graph for it, plug them in, okay? Plug in points, and then find the slope. Okay, very straightforward. And I will ask you guys a question like this, maybe on one of your quizzes, okay? There you go, have fun. This is, again, an x-squared type of graph. Definitely understand that because that's gonna come up a lot in this chapter. Good luck, have fun, 8-2 coming up.